very, very, renowned person. Again, a very senior IAS officer. His name is enough because in the bureaucracy, everybody knows him and everybody knows him in the name of Dadu. So, Mr. J.K. Dadu, I am going to invite former Additional Secretary and also the advisor, financial advisor to the Government of India is here, and I am inviting to give his deliberations. He is known for writing a special book, 100 Ideas to Improve the Governance in India, and that was very, very famous. And I'm not going to tell much about because he is already well known. A big round of applause for Mr. J.K. Dadu.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Pandey, for inviting me. Thanks for a wonderful panel on the dais. And thanks to the august audience who have had the patience to sit through the entire morning and listen. Now, this topic is very wide, local to global, technology, education, entrepreneurship. I will try and give you a complete perspective of where we stand today with respect to local and global. What are we doing in terms of technology, education, and entrepreneurship? And then what are the gaps in local to global? In my concluding remarks, I will tell you which need to be plugged. I've done 6 hours of research, and I assure you what I'm going to speak will benefit if you can listen patiently. Number one, in 1 AD, that is 2024 years ago, India accounted for 33% of world GDP. The entire Western Europe, including the massive Roman Empire, had only 21%, and China had 26%. So when we talk of local to global today, we want to reach that same height which we had in 1 AD, 2024 years ago. Now, where do we stand today? We are number 41 in the Global Innovation Index. In Global Competitive Index, we are 39th out of 140 countries. In Logistics Performance Index, which is very, very important to develop a country, we are 35th out of 160 countries. So you can understand where we are in terms of what we were earlier, and that was the perspective which I wanted to give you. Now let's look at some of our important achievements which make us aspire from local to global. We were importing 35 raw materials for drugs that we manufacture, and we are now creating them locally. It's a very big achievement because our total exports of pharma goods is more than $40 billion today. 200 defense items we manufacture. I worked in the Ministry of Defense for 7 years. We used to buy everything from Russia. Today, 200 defense items we manufacture. We are exporting nearly 168 defense items abroad today. We were a net importer till 15 years ago. We are the fastest growing economy according to the International Monetary Fund and should reach $5 trillion by 2028. These are IMF figures, not any political figure. We have mobile broadband connectivity or user base with 840 million people out of 1.4 billion in our country. In 5G user base, we have developed the fastest globally, and we have 100 million 5G users in 738 districts of the country. No country has been able to achieve that. 5G subscriptions are expected to reach 860 million. We are 100 million now, 860 million by 2030. We are also expecting 60 to 70 million households to reach the upper middle class by 2030, which means an income of more than $10,000 annually. By 2030, generative AI would contribute nearly $1 trillion to the India's GDP, says Ernst & Young. And 200 India-origin people are in leadership positions in 15 countries, 60% of them being cabinet ministers. So you can well understand how local has gone real global. In 2023, globally, China had 362 initial public offerings, IPOs, and India was second at 240, with South Korea, a developed country, at only 112. So you again see where we are. If you look at UPI transactions, which is the biggest achievement India has made, we have crossed 100 billion transactions in 2023, covering 182 lakh crores. 40 countries today are using UPI, and once Africa starts using it, we will touch a figure of nearly 100 countries using UPI. There are 17 large fund houses who've invested more than $500 million up to $1 billion in India in the last 5 years. 17 large fund houses. The states, and Mr. Mishra just mentioned about Odisha, states are attracting investment in a very big way. Gujarat, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, UP, West Bengal, Chhattisgarh, MP, Maharashtra, Odisha, Rajasthan, Uttarakhand, Haryana, and Andhra Pradesh. They are leading the pack with more than 1 lakh crores of investment being promised and assured by private investors like you. Now, this is another very important data which I'm going to throw at you. 1,500 German companies are in India, 1,200 Japanese companies, and 1,000 Korean companies doing extensive business here. There's no other country which has this large presence of foreign companies. India, if you look at the demographics of India, we have 42 cities which have a million-plus population. 6 cities have a population of more than 10 million. Many countries don't have that kind of a population. And 13 cities have a population of about 4 million plus. So that shows the demographic demand dividend that this country invites from foreign investors. If you look at the retail industry of India in 2023, the figures are 62 lakh crores, of which the unorganized sector contributes nearly 80%. And if you look at the Indian MSME sector, this is about 200 million strong. Now I move on to technology, and the important points only I'll mention here. There's a large amount of data available. The technologies that are the technologies of future are AI, machine learning, blockchain, Internet of Things, virtual reality, and augmented reality. Now there are 3 centers of excellence which the Government of India has announced in the last budget, and in 5 years, leading research on these 6 topics would be done at these 3 centers of excellence created by the Government of India. We have 500 million internet subscribers today, 1.3 billion Aadhaar card holders, and 1.2 billion cell phone users. No other country has this. We have 360 million smartphone users and 300 million people engaged in social media, a record of sorts. Moving on, 99% of the mobile phones that we use today are manufactured in India. There was a time many of these got imported. And we are exporting cell phones to the tune of $11.1 billion, with Apple itself accounting for $5 billion. The electronics manufacturing in India is going to reach $300 million by 2030. If you look at the Fortune 500 companies, 125 of these are creating their global capacity centers in India, and these will be ready in the next 3 to 5 years. What are global capability centers? These are offshore development centers providing end-to-end solutions for all your back office, IT, and support functions. If you look at the total IT load, this again is a very good indicator of the extent of IT penetration in the country. 7 cities in India have crossed 884 megawatts in 2023, and we expect it to cross 1 gigawatt this year. The National Quantum Mission, about which you might have read in the Economic Times today, is going to be set up with thematic hubs by 150 researchers in 40 identified institutions of India, again a record of sorts. The new Telecom Act allows for the first time allocation of satellite spectrum, which has huge potential to ensure that every corner of this country, no matter how remote it is, will get linked to mobile and broadband connectivity, which is fast, which comes from space, and like Elon Musk, will be able to penetrate every part of this country. I move on to education. Again, some data I'll throw at you. Many of you may not be aware, we have 1.5 million schools in this country. We have 260 million students, and the enrollment ratio in 1,000 universities and 42,000 colleges of India is 40 million, which is the largest in the whole world. We have 10 million teachers at all levels, and India's global higher education has huge potential in STEM, sports, language, and culture. We have, for your information, 50,000 international students studying in India. Now, where does the challenge lie in education? Just 2 small points. We spend $17 billion on Indian students going abroad. And 50% of our higher education institutes in the country are not accredited. So these are 2 main challenges: how to ensure that we don't send so many students abroad and spend $17 billion of foreign exchange, and how do we accredit most of our higher education institutes so that people study here. Then there are two or three other challenges which I'll quickly tell you. There are 2 lakh government schools which don't have a library. There are 6,000 schools in India, government schools, which don't have a building. These are places where private sector needs to help the government. There are 5 lakh elementary schools which lack teachers, and Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, which was started 25 years ago to ensure that we have a primary school every 2 kilometers from a village. A student should not be able to walk more than 2 kilometers, is still to be achieved. Innovations in education are plenty, but I'll mention just 2. Research parks are being set up in IITs of Madras, Mumbai, Kharagpur, Kanpur, Delhi, Guwahati, Hyderabad, and Gandhinagar, and the Indian Institute of Science for innovative research. This is a major step taken by the government. And in the Indian institutes are being allowed foreign campuses abroad, and foreign institutes are being allowed Indian campuses as per the national new education policy. Last, on this issue, NASSCOM says that from IT and ITES, our turnover today is $190 billion, and with an 8 to 10% growth rate, we should be able to achieve $500 billion by 2030. I move on to entrepreneurship, and then I'll come to the gaps in our local to global scenario. We have the 3rd largest startup ecosystem globally, and 1,14,000 startups have been registered by the Department of Public Policy and Implementation. Bangalore, Delhi, NCR, Mumbai are the three hotbeds of these startups, and the areas are technology, e-commerce, fintech, and healthcare. 14 science and technology entrepreneurship parks are on the anvil, and 24 technology business incubators have been established in India. Moving on to the biotechnology sector, India's turnover here is about 80 billion, and new age entrepreneurs are required to double it with solutions in healthcare, agriculture, environment, and industry. Now, in my concluding part of the speech, I'd like to mention what are the gaps in our local to global scenario. This is very, very important because that's where the new unicorns of the world will come up. Number one, we import 2 lakh crores worth of oil seeds and pulses. And we have a pulses and an oil seed mission running for the last 25 years. Now, this is not rocket science. We can easily create enough self-sufficiency in these 2 food grains or these 2 food crops, which can save 2 lakh crores of imports. Second, fuel. Crude oil imports are more than $60 billion in our import bill. While we have local producers wanting to do more exploration, wanting to do more discovery, and wanting government to incentivize them, we need a huge impetus here to see that we are able to get oil locally. Number 3, fertilizer. Fortunately, fertilizer imports have gone down, but we still are not in a position to be self-sufficient. And here again, this is not a rocket science. Fertilizer, local self-sufficiency is possible. I move on to a very interesting commodity called gold. Now, many of you may not be aware, we import 800 tons of gold, and with today's prices, $40 billion we spend on that. What is our total stock of gold in the country? World Gold Council has estimated 30,000 tons, of which 20,000 tons is with individuals like you and me, and 10,000 tons with our temples. Now, this is a stock of gold which has not become a flow. The stock is getting added on every year, and we are importing 800 tons every year. Now, we need to do something to monetize this stock so that our local requirements of 800 tons can be met locally without any imports. My last point is about semiconductor chips. You can't run any electronic equipment without these chips. We've been importing these chips for donkey's years. Now, government has decided to set up 2 semiconductor fabrication units, one by an Israeli company with an $8 billion investment, and the other by Tata's. You might have read in the Economic Times today, Tata's will tie up with a Taiwanese company and create these chips. The only hope that I want to say in my conclusion is that while politicians throw a lot of figures of what our economy will be in 2030, 2040, 2047, IMF figures are most reliable, and IMF says we will reach $5 trillion, become the 3rd largest economy in 2028. Let's hope for the best. Thank you very much.